We are back to the podcast lab 2.0.
2.0? I like it here. Don't get me wrong. We're in Steveston.
I know. Can't go wrong with that. And then while we shoot the podcast, we have the two little Frenchies being with us.
Yeah. Emotional support animals.
Yes. But with that being said, how are you? It's been a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
How you been? How's it? Actually, first of all, how's the wife? How's the baby?
As every day goes by, my respect for women who go through pregnancy and birthing grows and grows. So, to my lovely fiance, if you're listening to this, I love you very much. Thank you for going through this for us.
Yeah.
It's just, I feel like it's crazy what women's bodies go through.
Yeah.
And seeing as how I'm sitting here with you right now, baby's still not here yet.
Which is kind of like, okay, truthfully be told, I don't think I told you this, but by the time we finished the last podcast, I'm like, I don't think there's going to be another one for a little while with Jeff.
Well, I mean, like, as of today, October 26th, when we're filming, we're almost 38 weeks pregnant. So really, it could be any day now.
Yeah.
So I'm literally just sitting at home. Okay, we're waiting. We're trying to do what we need to do, but it could be any time. So it's on his schedule now.
The baby is already... This is my household going forward. Footsteps already there.
Yeah,
I'm gonna come out whenever I feel like coming out.
Exactly. So we're just trying to make it as calm for him as possible. The nursery's ready. Everything's ready. He's in position.
So any moment now.
Any moment now.
All right. Well, if like the next episode you still see this handsome gentleman around, we're gonna ask some questions like, what's going on now?
Or maybe we're just managing it so well that he's already here.
Maybe.
Yeah.
You're
How are you?
I am doing well. Business as per usual. I don't have a baby coming, but obviously a lot of people might have known that my Cremo, my older dog, kind of fractured his leg earlier this year. So we've been really ramping up the physio. So every week I bring him to the vet twice, and then lots of walking. Hopefully that he will be able to kind of use that hand. One thing that I learned from this experience is that dogs, unlike humans, they don't think in a way how we think when we need to get to point A to point B. Like, when we walk, we're like, okay, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. But apparently for dogs, which is I just learned, is that going from point A to point B, they don't think about how their limbs work. In their brain, it's just like, I need to go there. And then everything else is self-conscious. So now, because during the fracture, he didn't use one of his hands for a really long time. So now I'm just actually need to reprogram him, actually letting his subconscious know that he has that fourth arm and he should be using it. And so a lot of doing stairs, a lot of running really quickly, because the doctor says that it doesn't matter what kind of activities, you just need to find an activity that he continuously use that arm, because then that's the only way to teach his subconscious that, hey, I actually have this arm here that I need to put it down and start using it.
That's crazy. So he has to relearn that he actually has that fourth leg or arm, and that he should be using it. Yeah,
like he subconsciously, it's the harder part is I'm not teaching him consciously. Like, it's not like sit, here's a treat. It's not like that. It's like I'm actually trying to deep into his subconscious. I feel like a therapist all of a sudden.
I was just gonna say, I'm like, you're starting a new career as dog therapy, but you're definitely the #1 dog father.
Thank you. Now, with that being said, that's our personal update. I think a lot of our listeners didn't really come in to listen to our personal updates. Oh, no, maybe some of them are. But as we enter the end of October, the last month of the fall season, there is quite a bit of news that came out in the last 30-something odd days. So why don't we quickly go through them, and then as per usual, see what our opinions is. Gonna talk a little about rental today. We're gonna talk about that Airbnb. What's up? Give me a high five on that. I knew it. We're gonna talk a little bit about builders, and then obviously something about views and stuff like that.
A bit more of a mixed bag this month, which I dearly appreciate. I feel like last month it was a little bit too serious.
It's very gloomy. It's very, very gloomy. So let's get
started us off.
I will get started with the first one. As you guys can see from the article here, Vancouver passes motion to revise the city's view cones. first question for you before I even comment, did you even know that Vancouver had a view cone? Realistically telling me.
I'm glad you're asking me this. At first, when I read view cone, I thought that they were updating the cones that they use for construction and road work, because either they were not appealing or orange wasn't the right color. And then when I actually read what the view cones were, I'm like, this has got to be a fucking joke.
Yeah, for a lot of people that doesn't know, let's quickly go back into history. Vancouver, the city of Vancouver started looking into this view cone into the 70s, but they did not bring it into a rule until 1989. If you don't know, a view cone basically is there's different spots within the city that when they look in a certain direction, there must be certain things that they need to see, like the most obvious one is obviously our North Shore Mountains, right? So they would say that any building that is kind of within this view cone that is going to be building in the future cannot surpass a certain level. So it blocks the view of the mountains. In the city of Vancouver, there is 26 protective view cones. There's a lot near Falls Creek, Canby area, Granville, Main area, Commercial Drive, Queen Elizabeth, and Trout Lake. And currently, to kind of put it into perspective, the current St. Paul's Hospital has 5 view cones passing through it. Now, let me just quickly explain to you why we're bringing this up. How does it impact anything that we're saying? The view cone actually overwrites any zoning bylaws. Okay, so as per this article, let's say in downtown Vancouver, the zoning says that they can build anywhere between 300 feet to about 450 feet, which, as a quick reference, every 10 feet is one floor, roughly, okay? On the west end, so the west end side, allowing to 550 feet. However, the view cone pushes is that in the downtown core, they're only allowed 213 feet, and on the northwest corner of downtown, instead of allowing 550 feet, they only allow 345 feet. So you can tell by just every 10 feet is one floor, how many floors they're trying to cut down, and which is, once again, overseeing what the zoning bylaw is. A lot of people just think, oh, zoning allows me to build this. Why is the developer not building that? It's because of all of this other rules that oversees it, right? Obviously, why people want to revise it, I mean, that should be easy enough. We're in a housing crisis. Anything that we can build is a plus, right? Whether it be now or down the future. Now, the opposition side, which I found it quite interesting, their side is saying that don't revise this is because as rent gets more and more expensive, the view of the mountains are a precious amenities. I'm finger quoting amenities right now. That should be preserved like other amenities such as swimming pools, rooftop gardens, so on and so on.
Oh, don't forget, this is free.
Free, that's right. So I didn't know that getting a postcard kind of view was an amenity. I didn't know that. I thought that was a luxury.
It's for our mental health.
Really? How about the people that can't even find a place? How about all these homeless people that can't find a place to rent? How about their mental health?
Yeah.
Anyways, so I just wanted to summarize the story. Here's my thought, okay? And I'll let you kind of speak what you think. Personally, yes, I feel like the view cone should be revised. Once again, it's passed in 1989. What kind of highways do we have in 1989? They definitely don't have the Shangri-La. They don't have the Paradox. I almost call it the Trump Tower.
Paradox Hotel.
Yeah, Paradox Hotel. They don't have all these massive towers back in the days. Now, because there is, and now we're also in a rental crisis or a housing crisis, definitely we need to go back and take a look at some of these old things that we passed and be just like, okay, what are the things that we should change, right? And I think this view cone definitely we need to change it. Yeah. I'm just on the flip side though. Here's another thing though. I'm not 100% supportive of it. The reason why I'm not sold on the fact that if we're able to build, for example, what they're saying here is that extra 7 floors, extra 15 floors in the downtown core to maximize its density, that all of a sudden our homes is going to become affordable.
No, because I feel like these high rises are just going to be equally as expensive.
Right, and then on top of that, what I was thinking, sorry to cut you off there, is that they're building the top extra 8 floors, top extra 10 floors. And we all know that those homes are generally
way more expensive.
Way more expensive because it comes with the view, and some developers might make the bigger, the bigger floor plans on the higher floors. So is it really creating more supply to the market? Yes, it is. Is it creating more of the proper supply to the market? That's kind of where I'm kind of questioning a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a little bit left undecided. And I think the laws that they had back then to protect these view cones, definitely a little bit archaic. I would love to see what the population was in Vancouver at that time compared to what it is now. It's just, I agree. Always with these policies, we think we do need to adapt to the times. Yes, maintaining that postcard view is very, very important. It's like iconic. It's what makes a lot of these buildings or units unique, and that's a selling point, and that's what kind of keeps the pricing there too. But when you have thousands of people who don't even have homes, I agree with you. Like, what about them? I think they'd rather have a roof over their head than have a North Shore mountain view. Like, I don't know if you've seen right below Oak Street right now, going into Vancouver. There are so many tents there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
It's a huge encampment, and I have no idea what's going on there, and I'm sure those people would rather have a roof over their head. They probably have a great view, though.
Oh, yeah. No, of course they do. And also the North Richmond guys, like by the casino. Oh, they're by the river. That great view. Great for mental health. Except for the fact that it's freaking like 0 degrees outside and they're sleeping in a tent. Right? The other thing I wanted to, this kind of reminded me, since we're kind of moving the conversation to Richmond, is Richmond itself, right? Richmond itself, everybody knows that, we can only build up to 15 stories. But a lot of people thought that the reason why we can only build up to 15 stories is because of our soft soil. Right? But in reality, I needed to correct them. I'm like, look, if you've seen the Boza project that is in US, that's literally on the Fraser River, and they're constructing two 40-story high-rises there, with the foundation is literally in the river once again, and they're totally okay with it. Do you not think they can do that exact same thing in Richmond? Of course. The soft soil excuse is so outdated, right? However, the city of Richmond doesn't do it is because, let me remind people, the reason why the city of Richmond can only build up to 15 stories is nothing to do with the soft soil anymore. It is because of the fact that they sold their airspace parcel or the air rights to the YVR. Why am I bringing this up is just that if we're thinking about revising the view cones, I personally think that maybe it's time for us to maybe think about revising that space parcel with the YVR, maybe allowing Richmond to build a little bit higher to increase its density. Right? I don't think that's too far. When was the last time you saw an airplane really, really, really close to a high-rise building somewhere in Richmond?
Wasn't there an airplane that crashed into a building on Westminster?
That was like 20 years ago, man. That was literally...
See, people always remember that kind of shit, even though it was 20 years ago.
That could have happened anywhere. That guy could have had a heart attack, took a left, and then slammed his house into the single-family houses by Marple.
You're right. I do actually appreciate seeing the airplanes like so close, though, sometimes. But I don't think it's close enough that it's a hazard.
Right.
You never know. Not my area of expertise, but I agree with you. If we're going to look at the view cones, we should look at the airspace rights too and see if there's any opportunity to tweak it there.
That's right. And I would say that I understand why YVR hasn't done it, but I just think coming back to why I'm bringing this up is because the reason why they haven't revised, they haven't looked at it is for safety. Like what you said, why haven't the plane smash into a building? Even my personally thinking is the chance of that is so low that
we're more likely to get into a motor vehicle accident on the road than we are to have a plane crash into our building.
Exactly. Now on the flip side, coming back to the view cone, who are we hurting? Who are we hurting? Who are we hurting? This particular lady's, whoever's in the article about her mental health.
Yeah, I don't want to stereotype for fear of getting canceled, but it's just definitely a certain demographic where I feel like are the ones that are complaining about, we're violating the historical aspects of beautiful British Columbia in Vancouver. Right. Something like that. They're not the ones that are stressed about not having a home.
Exactly. Because they probably bought that way back in the days for 45 grand. Right. Anyways, long story short, I think to summarize, I personally feel like I do like where this is going because I do feel like the city of Vancouver or Greater Vancouver does need to evolve into the next phase of city planning. We can't keep holding on to stuff back in the 70s and 80s while trying to move the city forward. Right? Imagine this. Imagine China 30 years ago. they were going through this economic boom in Shanghai and Beijing and Guangzhou. But then all of a sudden, like, no. This village, we had a deal back in like, the 30s that we need to keep this village, and all the homes here needs to be built with tiles, bricks, and you're not allowed to tear down. Oh, by the way, no new roads, because we need to preserve the cultural importance of whatever this is.
Bro, even in northern China, they have like mountains just full of solar panels. Do you think they give a shit about a view cone? No.
Once again, I'm not saying that China is better. I'm just saying that definitely there is different priorities when you're talking about that coming to this. And I think our issue now in Vancouver or in North America is big enough that maybe we need to start having a hybrid model between these two extremes. That's all.
No, I agree with you.
All right. Anything you want to add before we move on to your favorite topic?
Oh no, let's go.
Let's go? I'll let you do it. Come on, let's go for the next article. We're going to combine 3 articles into one to chat about. You go.
Okay, number 1 headline here. Vancouver room for rent has curtains instead of walls. Number 2 is BC man offering free housing for girlfriend with benefits in Whistler. Tied together lastly with scams and sketchy situations. Students struggle to find safe housing during BC rental crisis. Okay, I think we can get the elephant out of the room and say that all these 3 articles, they're messed up. That we're in this situation right now. Okay. Right. $750 for a room made from curtains from a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom home. There were a total of 6 bedrooms
in a 3-bedroom.
In a 3-bedroom.
So they morphed a 3-bedroom.
They doubled it.
They doubled it.
Good for them.
I mean, good for the landlord.
That's creative.
That's great. The second one is this happened in Whistler. This gentleman, I don't even know what he's thinking, man. Just wanted to rent a little 1-bedroom studio with no cost. Wanted to even do an interview process. One thing that I learned about this particular article, aside from our comment about the rental crisis and everything like that, I learned is that we're not property managers, but I learned that even if it's a verbal agreement between, like, if you have a place to rent to me, but we didn't sign on the residential tenancy agreement, the moment that we have an agreement, apparently residential tenancy agreement automatically protects me.
It protects you, but is it enforceable and can you prove it? That's like a different story, right?
It's just going to be a harder road to climb should things go south.
This isn't the first example that I've seen. I think even in Toronto, I saw an article that was someone offering to rent a 1-bedroom shared with 1 queen bed shared.
Oh yeah,
and it was a female, and she said that, my previous tenant is moving out, and our arrangement was fine, but I have so many questions. How does it work? 2 people who are not in a relationship sharing a bed and a bedroom.
It's like, good night, I'm gonna go to sleep now.
Like, do they have a privacy screen like on the bed? Like, is there a divider of some sort?
Okay, I read about it. It's a queen size bed, so you don't have enough size to put a pillow there in the middle. If it's a king size bed, then maybe. But why isn't it just 2 single beds?
I don't know either. But
it was at $950. They're renting for $950.
$950. Right? Desperate times call for desperate measures.
Desperate measure. Now this is the last one I do want to put a little bit more focus on, and I'll explain the reason why. This is talking about an engineer student at BCIT is basically almost becoming homeless. And I think his landlord wanted to sell the homes and stuff. They can't find any adequate housing, and he actually went on Reddit and started asking for advice. Like, how do I live in my car? Like, do I go to the gym to take a shower and stuff like that?
That's actually very doable. I know some people have done that before.
I know people that definitely done that before. Right? I was close to being into that particular situation, but I won't get into that when I was much younger. So basically, this is where the conversation actually gets kind of interesting. Generally, in school areas, demand far outstrips supply.
Yes.
Agree?
Yep.
I just didn't know that it was to this particular point. I didn't know that SFU only has 9% housing capacity. 9.
Yeah, they only offer 9% of the total amount of students that can. That's
all they have. Yep. That's all they have. UBC is a little bit better. with 25% of the students being able to be housed in UBC. But at this year, during peak waiting season, they had 8,000 people waiting for a dormitory.
And I mean, like, they have plans to build more, but I mean, we all know how long that's going to take.
No, this is crazy because you're absolutely right. We're currently on year 5 out of the 10-year plan to add 8,000 student beds across BC, right? And we have 7,500 more to go, but UBC itself is already saying that they have an 8,000 student wait list this year, not like 5 years down the road, right? So it's just crazy. Like, to me, honestly, this is the crazy. Now, this is the area that I wanted to have a discussion with you. The article says universities should take on more responsibility on campus housing. It's not enough just to accept them, take the tuition, but it's important to help them settle down and provide housing for them if they want to come to your school. For example, UBC. Like, I'm going to accept you as an international student, but aside from that responsibility, if I'm going to accept you, I now need to help you look for housing, or I need to have open some sort of housing within UBC for you to stay in. Agree, disagree? What is your comment on this? School basically taking over the responsibility.
I'm going to take a page out of Justin Trudeau's book and saying housing is not a primary responsibility of university education. I mean, to an extent. I think there should be a certain threshold to say that, hey, if you are a BC university, you have to have a minimum of 25% capacity. I think 25 to 30% is fair. Fair. Because then you're running into something that's not the area of expertise of like a post-secondary education, real estate. That's not really their forte. Their job is to educate. So let them do what they're best at and help them out with the rest. Right. I mean, that's, to me, is the most logical answer. Granted, there's also other issues at play. Them accepting so many international students, of course they're making more money off that. Do they give a shit about where these international students are sleeping? No, they don't. No, don't really want to get into that part, but to answer your question, I do agree with it. I don't think that they should be responsible, but I think there should be some minimum standard. I think so. Like UBC, when I saw 20%, I was like, I think they're trying. Yeah. SFU at 9%, I was like, yo. But you're already up in the mountain. There's like so many developments out there, I feel like. I always see so many listings out in SFU area. And this, I think, is the problem that arise from a decision that is the Canadian government decided in way long time ago, which is instead of the government taking responsibility to do purpose-built rentals, they pass that opportunity onto individual investors, such as me, you, and stuff like that, to buy a condo there and just to rent it out to students. So basically the government is passing on that responsibility. And then that obviously caused greed, blah, blah, blah. And we are in the situation that we are in today. So I feel like this is no different. It just gone to the extreme because, once again, the university just aggressively keeps introducing and recruiting new students. Do you blame them? Who in their right mind wants to deal with housing for universities, college kids? Nobody in their right mind wants to manage shit like that. Also on top of that, if you're seeing some of these housings, because I sell UBC, you're like, okay, I don't want to deal with this at all. You're like, what is going on? This is personal hygiene should be a mandatory class in high school. I feel like just like finance literacy, right? Exactly. Right. So my point here, I'm gonna go both directions because I'm kind of like you. Okay, I'll jump into conclusion is I feel like no, the college shouldn't be responsible into housing to a certain point. I think 20% or 25% should be a bare minimum. SFU definitely needs to do a little better, right? Here's my argument for it though. I think for yes, the reason why anyone would say yes, school should be in charge of the housing is, think about it this way. Basically, this is a micro scale of a country. Let's take Canada, for example. If we're gonna allow all these population, people moving into Canada, like without any thinking about housing, what have we been talking about the government? What the hell are you doing? Why are you not building more houses for these people? You're just letting all these people in. Okay? Now replace the word Canada
with so-and-so university, right? You're letting all these students in, right? Well, I also change immigrant to students. You're letting all these students in, and you're not dealing anything with the housing. And look at where we are today. Students are almost literally going to be homeless, right?
Well, I think the pushback or the other side of it with that point, I would say, is it's a parent's responsibility to educate your child, right? It's not like anyone's forcing these people to go to these universities. So wouldn't it be up to the family and the parents' responsibility for the people that, do have parents that are involved to help them plan?
Right. And plus there is also student loan. So I already thought about how to rebut myself, right? And for me on the thing, it's like, I agree with you. And I'm going to add on to it. For me is like, university is not a universal thing. University is if you're highly educated enough and your family does have X amount of dollars, or you utilize student loan. So unlike housing where it's universal, like everybody in housing, university is not for everybody. And it shouldn't be for everybody. To be honest, there should be more people going to BCIT and becoming tradespeople, because that's actually where the money is at nowadays. But I'm not going to get into that now in this particular podcast. No. Right? So I agree with you, right? On that respect. Okay. Now, let me just share with you the reason why I would say, no, they shouldn't do this. Okay. I think the university shouldn't do this, because if they do this, what's going to happen to the tuition prices?
They're going to skyrocket.
Exactly. Right? And where are we going to... So what are we doing?
Who's going to pay for it?
Who's paying for it? These young people who's mortgaging their future to do this. And imagine that your student housing, your university, every single semester is not $5,000 anymore. Oh, sorry, is it $5,000? It's probably $8,000 nowadays.
I feel like it's probably $8,000 by now.
It's $15,000. Okay? And on top of that, they'll probably put some of this levy or extra tax on students who doesn't even need to be living in the university.
Yes, it will be across the board.
It will be across the board.
They have to.
And that's going to create a little issue in regards to it, right? Right? You agree?
Of course.
Okay. Now let me rebut myself on regards to that. I feel bad for, university having to up their tuition and, it's a huge mess. But UBC, according to, it's actually, the article is called UBSE, UBYSSEY. UBC had a surplus of $100 million last year. Let me bring that even further. SFU had a 21 million surplus last year. That's I'm not talking about revenue, I'm talking about profit, pure profit. So UBC pocketed $100 million.
I believe that.
So the argument would be, why can't the university spend some of this $100 million surplus to create more housing? Way more housing. I know they already cut some of that, revenue into housing, but can they not expedite this with all the surplus that's happening, right? And here's another thing, to bring it aside from Canada. Do you know that Harvard, their endowment funds, it's actually more than a lot of countries' annual GDP? We're talking about not millions, we're talking about billions, hundreds of billions to be exact, right? Can they not use some of those money to build housing, student housing, to make that experience a little bit easier? Of course they can. Do they actually want to do it? Of course not, because university is a business.
Who would want to spend more money than they absolutely have to?
Exactly.
Unless someone forces them to.
Exactly.
And then as soon as the government wants to get into education and that, it's going to be a whole other sticky situation.
That's
right.
right.
You already know, people make donations to universities to offset their taxes.
Exactly. Do you really think they want to donate to the university?
A lot of these people that donate, like, okay, how much development in UBC is built by the Wall Foundation?
There you go. And you think that Wall is just doing it from a kind heart? Of course. Now, now the other thing before we move on is the previous two articles about the girls with benefit, the curtains instead of the walls. Honestly speaking, it's new news now to a lot of people, but me being a realtor and being in this kind of field for a long time, none of this is actually really new news. I've been hearing this for for example, the curtains as walls. I've been hearing that happening in UBC for like a decade already. Right?
Scratch UBC. It's been happening around like all across the city for decades.
And downtown, I see it now. I feel like it's now obviously brought onto the table, into the magnifying glass because of all the crisis that we're in. If I bring this situation out 15 years ago, nobody will even flinch. Oh, just get a better job and just go rent another 1-bedroom somewhere else, right? Why do you have to deal with this? Well, now people are getting dealt with this and they can't get out of it, so now everybody is bringing out to talk. The girls with the the girlfriend with benefit, come on, let's be honest, is that new? Is that really new?
I don't think so.
Yeah, there we go. Right?
I mean, maybe new to me.
I heard it way back, and we're not talking about condos. Come on, I heard girls with a girlfriend with benefits, and they live in mansions. Okay, they give a full mansion. All right. Ready to move on to the juicy part?
Yeah.
Let's get on to it. I'll let you start. I'm excited to talk about this.
Okay, so just like Joe and I predicted a month ago, BC government proposing regulating Airbnb starting May 1st of 2024.
Let's read some rules.
Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act will basically take out most of the Airbnb listings. Here are some of the new rules that they propose.
Yeah.
Short-term rental is anything less than 90 days. Must be only from the host principal residence in population of 10,000 or more people or smaller communities within 15 kilometers of a larger municipality. If it's in a single family home, you can list either the basement suite or a laneway home, but not both.
Okay.
List the primary residence as a short-term rental as long as they live in there the majority of the time.
Wasn't this the core statement of Airbnb when they first started as a company?
Yeah, like what the fuck? Maximum fine would go up to $3,000 per day from the current $1,000 per day.
Yeah.
Severe contraventions could go up to $50,000. Smaller municipalities with populations under 10,000, including Whistler and Tofino, won't be subject to it, but the communities could choose to opt in. Wow.
Yeah. And as we were doing more research, we got a follow-up article on this.
So in the follow-up article here, it says Airbnb urges hosts to push back on BC legislation to limit the short-term rental. They're asking for hosts to reach out to their MLA saying rules are gone too far. The government is classifying any short-term rental as rentals less than 90 days.
They want to get that changed.
I think some of these were like only 30 days, which is much more reasonable. 90 days for 3 months, we can talk about in a bit. This is the reasoning people from Airbnb are stating why it's unfair. Now, however, Rotman questions the BC government's reasoning, saying, and I quote, "The legislation won't alleviate the province's long-standing housing problems," end quote. Regular people at a time of increased price pressures, cost of living pressures, and inflationary pressures, people are looking to make some extra income. Many of our hosts are operating out of their primary residence, or they are renting out their vacation property, the property they use on an occasional basis to go skiing or whatever. They use that Airbnb short-term rental income to earn additional income to pay the mortgage for that property. We know that these properties aren't going to change the housing market, he said. If anything, he believes the rules will only make life more unaffordable.
Interesting.
Makes sense. I mean, if they're not able to offset part of that, it's just going to make it harder for them to be able to afford that vacation home, right?
Yes.
What it will do is to take money out of the pocket of regular British Columbians, make travel more unaffordable for people, and make it harder to visit beautiful parts of the province that a lot of local British Columbians like to travel to.
Thoughts before I start babbling on with all these beautiful predictions that we made?
I mean, so far from here, correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't say anything about you having to live in it at the same time as an Airbnb.
Well, I mean, it's your primary residence. They're asking primary residence.
But if I'm on vacation, then,
That's right.
If let's say I'm in Mexico for 6 months, then I could rent it out for 3 months.
Which was the core of what Airbnb was all about, right?
Yeah.
So what this is going to be taking out is those condos. Like, I can't just say downtown Vancouver, they're everywhere that people are buying it and just purely doing it for short-term rentals.
So all those ones around Gastown, like Kiefer Street, it's going to be really tough for them.
Yeah.
Because it's not fun living in those buildings. We've seen all the articles about people complaining how this feels like a hotel, especially when there's any major event. Like, what do you think it's going to be like when FIFA is here?
Yes, right?
Like,
That's right. Actually, I didn't even think about that. You just brought that up.
this could have happened at a better time. So the people that are buying investment properties in preparation for that shit.
We had clients that did that. I just remembered. Oh my God. What? You're putting new things in my head when we're doing a live podcast.
So, I don't know. It's like, we called that this was going to happen.
And based on, sorry to cut you off, based on the review and based on the viewership of our social media, we know that people really care about this all of a sudden.
Of course. How many people do we know operate an Airbnb?
Quite a bit. Yeah, quite.
I can think of on the top of my head at least 20 to 30 people, personally, that have an Airbnb.
Yep.
You think they're happy? So first they're going to increase the annual renewal fee, and then now they're going to slap them with this.
Yeah.
What do we say when we were filming this about New York? Is that, we think that Vancouver is going to try something similar. They're going to watch if it works in New York, and then they're going to try and implement it to make it look like they're doing something about the rental or housing crisis in Vancouver.
There we go.
And fast forward 1 month from now, high five.
High five. I honestly, I didn't know that they were going to introduce this quickly. And really, like I said, because this and parking was the two things that literally got us viral. Like we got, what was it, 16,000 views on Instagram and like over 10,000 views on YouTube Short. It's regarding this and also parking. This is just what people care about. Like in real estate, do they care about Airbnb? They care about parking. And because it went viral, I had a lot of people actually message me, like DM me, like realtors, consumers, strangers that have no idea who they are, just online people. And they're very extreme, very polarizing. You can imagine. So I'll just quickly summarize what people have been saying, and I'll kind of share with what I think. They think that this is almost technically banning Airbnb is a pro because it's finally happening. It's very easy to understand. Less short term, more long term rental market. Seems like it's going to be under control because there's 20,000 Airbnbs out there, and that's all potentially going to go back into the long-term pool. And that's where the argument stops, right? A lot of people saying that, no, this is not the right way to do it. I had this agent that got super emotional texting me on Instagram. I was just like, whoa, there's so many F words that I saw in one paragraph. He says that this is just another slap in the face to capitalism and democracy in a way. They're saying that why are we punishing people who are taking a little bit more risk in regards to their money, right? Why are we now also controlling how they can and cannot invest their hard-earned money, right? So they're just saying that we took a risk buying this real estate to do Airbnb. We have risk like, what happens if the tenant destroys my place? Noise complaints, the cleaning fees. What happens if it doesn't get rent out? I still have a mortgage to pay, blah, 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 blah. All these different risks as an entrepreneur, right? Why am I not getting rewarded? Why am I getting hated on for being able to take that risk? I thought for human development, it's all about taking risk and pushing it to an envelope where, people are not comfortable with, to have breakthroughs in technology, breakthroughs in people's thinkings and stuff like that, right? They just feels like this is just another incident that the BC government is truly moving away from the capitalist society that we have and moving in more into a socialist society that we have, which for a lot of people, they don't feel comfortable being under the whole socialist program. But for some people, they absolutely love it. I have a really good high school friend. You might know him. I'll tell you his name afterwards. He messaged me. He was like, justice deserved. Like, held to these people doing Airbnbs. I'm just like, why? It's not fair. What's not fair? That they're doing Airbnb. I'm like, wait, what?
What's not fair about it? So if you take your money and you open a business and you're profitable, so someone can come and say, hey, it's not fair that you're allowed to open that business.
That's the thinking. Like, and then, as the discussion went down, I just realized that he just wants everything to be fair, standardized, and then we almost got into a conversation about universal basic income, almost, right? And that's him, and he's fully supporting of this. And I'm also hearing, because now it's all on the newspapers, I have agents that it's like, this is crazy. But I also have agents that's literally telling me that, thank God they're finally doing this. And I'm like, you're a real estate agent. Like, why are you just going with whatever the public is telling you? Like, you gotta think a little bit more about what is the potential consequences. AKA, what are we gonna do when FIFA is here? We don't have enough hotels.
What's going to happen to everyone who booked already in advance as soon as Vancouver was announced as a destination? What's going to happen to those people?
Exactly.
Good luck.
Yeah.
I mean, now in hindsight, maybe it's a good thing that they said no to doing the Winter Olympics here again. How they passed up on the bid.
True. I mean, with that being said, I think with this new rule, I want to talk about a couple of things for our listeners to take home that I think is for sure going to happen. Okay. First thing, downtown prices, downtown Vancouver, Chinatown, Gastown area, I think their prices will be suppressed for just a little bit longer. Downtown has had a hard hurdle coming out of COVID-19 in regards to the price points. We were finally seeing a little uptick, but I feel like this is going to have all of a sudden a spur of inventory onto the market, and I feel like that's probably going to hit the market the downtown market a little bit again, which really means that downtown market has been flowing at this straight line, I guess, for like a long time now. Yeah. Second thing I think it's going to happen is after 4 to 5 months of having these homes call onto the market, having some of them return to long-term rental, we're going to see increased rent again. Because
of course, it still doesn't. We talked about this before. The amount of supply that's going to come onto the market won't even make a splash.
Exactly.
In terms of what the demand is still out there. Yeah.
And me giving 4 to 5 months is already being quite lenient about this, right? I just think that even the whole 20,000 unit comes back onto the market, it's going to get absorbed just like that. So if people think that this is a temporary solution, this is a solution that will be gone like that. Like, it will just be like the problem is just going to come back immediately.
Well, let's kind of make a prediction right now. So we're saying by the time we film our March news update, we'll have a little bit of an update for this.
Right. Band-aid solution. That's the word I was looking for, right? Lastly, I think what this would actually do, and I'm really hoping this is the case, it might actually spur more developers wanting to build hotels in Vancouver. Come on, let's be honest, man. The last hotel we built was the Trump Tower, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Right? We need more, especially if we're going to take Airbnb away from the picture. We definitely need more.
Or are they just going to repurpose more office buildings into?
I mean, even that, if that's the case, great. I just think that we definitely need more hotel, because I don't agree with a lot of things in regards to what the pro Airbnb is saying. But one thing that he is saying that I do feel is absolutely correct is that if we take Airbnb out from the picture, traveling to Vancouver is going to get really, really, really expensive because our hotel fees are so high.
And when we see a hit on tourism, everyone's going to feel it.
Exactly, because a lot of our GDP does come with tourism, and these people who are in tourism has really been hit in the last 3 to 4 years, and this is definitely not going to help. Right, so so that's the whole thing to say. This actually links to another article. I'm not going to get into it, but they're saying that how they expect the Vancouver hotel fees to increase by about 8% in the next year. Just to kind of put things into perspective, they're expecting an 18% increase for Boston and a 15% increase for San Francisco. So they're expecting that we do need more hotels, basically.
I do not look forward to what next year is going to be like.
Well, we're just going to have to see.
Although it might make for, people who do live here, the summers might be a little bit less busy.
Right. However, I don't know how cruise ship work. When these cruise ship people, when they dock, do they stay in the cruise ship or do they use the hotel? I'm pretty sure
they stay back in the cruise ship.
Oh, thank God.
There's no way. Come on, you still get one cruise ship? Looks like there's like 1,000 people on there. Like,
I don't know. Like, that's one industry I have no clue because, I get seasickness a lot, so I don't even try to attempt to learn about cruise ships and stuff like that. Yeah, but ultimately, once again, you see, we don't know which is right or wrong. We just okay, well, this is happening now, but we just don't feel like this is the proper long-term solution.
The only thing I can say for sure is that Airbnb is just being used as another scapegoat.
Yeah.
I can say that with 100% conviction. That's my personal opinion.
Oh, and they're really gonna get attacked really, really soon. Airbnb stocks, you have it, you should probably sell. Just saying.
This is not financial advice.
Not a financial advice. But moving on, once again, super happy that me and Jeff got that right, even though we are way early on the schedule in regards to this ban on Airbnb. But let's move on to the next one. Jeff, you want to take the honors?
Okay, so here it says neighborhood residents hire development consultants to oppose Vancouver rental rezoning. Sounds awesome. City councilors unanimously approved a rezoning for a property in Dunbar, even if the neighbors are opposed to it, and even hired a former city planner, Chuck Brook, speaking in a paid professional capacity, to be in the opposition of the project. So that's the lengths that these people, the residents in the neighborhood, were willing to go. What they're trying to do is to construct a 5-story rental apartment building off of Dunbar at 6081 Collingwood Place. That would deliver 30 rental homes. So basically, they're trying to construct a 5-story rental apartment building off of Dunbar at 6081 Collingwood Place, and that will give them about 30 more rental homes. Now, the opposition for argument of not wanting the rental is the debate and opposition over the proposed rezoning. They focus on impacts the project would have on congestion and traffic in the area, access for emergency vehicles, and a lack of sidewalks on Collingwood Place.
I have so much rage right now, but anyways, keep going.
I feel it already. Okay, Brooke also spoke in opposition to the proposal, citing issues with there not being a viable means of accessing the parkade and the zoning type of the building not fitting with the characteristics of the neighborhood. I already know what you're thinking. Brooke highlighted that the streets in the area are not in a grid system and often have dead ends or cul-de-sacs. In this particular case, he said an RR zoning designation would not work, and a project with townhouses or stacked townhouses may be better suited for the area. Supportive councillor states the following. Councillor Mike Klassen said, there's a very clear need for rental housing in the city, and this project demonstrates how the city will have to be flexible when it comes to a lack of laneway access and closed off street ends. Joe, I know you have a lot to say about this topic, so why don't you go ahead first?
Okay, fine. Okay. I wrote everything down. When I was reading this, I got so angry. I think this is just another form of NIMBYism, not in my backyard. This is just to the extreme, where they don't even want it so badly that they're willing to hire someone at the next level to persuade the city that this is not a good idea.
Yep.
Okay. I got extra pissed off because this is especially the Dunbar neighborhood, which hasn't seen a lot of changes. 20 years? Come on,
that's being generous. 20 years. Okay, I grew up around that neighborhood, and yeah, I'd say in the last 20 years, there's been what, 5 developments?
Yeah, exactly, right?
And I get like what they're trying to do, but doesn't fit with the characteristics of the neighborhood. But what that last counselor said really makes sense to me. It's like, there is a rental crisis right now. This is the only way to be able to combat that. And I feel like they've already done a very good job in preserving the Dunbar neighborhood, especially even the Dunbar Theater. They're keeping it and revamping it into the new development.
Right, and I agree. Everything that you're saying was kind of, I was just like, they're doing this already. Like they're preserving what they need to preserve. And going back to the first article, we're talking about we have to move on to the next phase of the city. And Dunbar, what did we just talk about students in the last article? They have problems, and now we don't even want to build any rental housings around the area. This just sounds so ridiculous. So what I did is I'm going to break down every opposition. They were like, oh, this is not good. And
debunk it.
Debunk everything. Congestions and traffic. With any densification, of course there's going to be an increase of congestions and traffic. Show me an example that you can increase density without increasing congestion. I never seen it before. Unfortunately, humans we move when we walk, and we don't like to do things in an orderly manner, and we're just a bunch of messy creatures. That's just the way it is, unless you're telling me that we are building a ghost city. That's the only way for you to have no congestions, even though we have density. Ghost cities. nobody's driving on the road anyways, right? But once again, we talked about this whole parking situation in the last couple of podcasts. We went viral because of it.
Clearly, people like to drive.
Yeah, very clearly, right? Second thing, talking about parking, assessing parkade, like really, that's gonna be an argument here. Like, have you been around the area? I feel like really, this is just like, let's just grab whatever excuse to just throw against the wall and see if it sticks, right? Because there are driveways for single family houses around that area that is even wider than like some of these condos entrances that we came in. And on top of that, if we can make this work in Kits, why can we not make this work in Dunbar? You know what I mean?
I don't disagree with you at all. I think this is complete BS.
Okay, the last thing is dead end and cul-de-sac. Where is Orchid located right now? It's at a dead end. What is around Orchid? All these high rises.
Yep.
Right? I'm just having a hard time seeing how they can use a cul-de-sac as a way for not building higher density. A cul-de-sac will work in a higher density as well. I've been to Asia. I've seen it work. Right? High rise, cul-de-sac. Around the cul-de-sac, it's all high rises. It works. It's fine. Don't use that BS to say, hey, don't build, right? And then this is another thing is what I wanted to say here is this is just a perfect example that if you're getting really angry about your city not doing anything in regards to building affordable housing and stuff like that, sometimes we also need to understand, we're the biggest corporate. We put everything on the government. Like, why are you not building more housings and stuff like that? Sometimes it's out of the government's control. If they had to deal with this kind of not in my backyard mentality, which, whatever, I mean, we
all do to have to a certain extent.
To some extent. Like, it's tough for the government because unfortunately, once again, not to hate to compare us to China just like, no, whatever, your opinion doesn't count, right? In our democracy country, yeah, your opinion does count. But this is the reason why our rent and our prices are at the way it is. So the next time when you see when you see a news article or you are trying to buy something for your son, your daughter, and you just go, why the heck is this so expensive? You might as well roll down your window and start yelling at your neighbors too. Because your neighbors is causing, maybe yourself too, is causing the reason why, housing is where it is right now. Because everybody I know is like, yeah, build. But then it's like, can I build in your backyard? No, you can't build in my backyard.
I mean, humans are inherently entitled and selfish. So it doesn't really come to a surprise to me that I even see news like this because I do encounter a lot of it, especially being in that neighborhood growing up. There's a lot of people from previous generations that just want to preserve their way of life. They don't like change, but they want what's best for themselves only.
Yeah. But then they watch, the hypocrite part for me is, and then they watch TV like, yeah, they should do that. And then when it comes to them actually participating,
don't tax me more.
Yeah, there we go, right? Enough said. Let's move on to the next one.
All right.
I'll let you do this one. I think you found this article for us.
Okay. Yeah. Here it says, Vancouver staff recommend raising the rents in affordable housing pilot programs. The title in itself seems a bit of a contradiction already. So we're raising the rents in affordable housing. Okay, so why don't we do a little bit of dive on what this is? There's Vancouver City staff that are proposing an increase in the moderate income rental housing as a strategy to get developers to build more affordable homes. Because of course, it's the developer's fault that they're not building enough homes. But there is some disagreement that this is just another way for developers to make money. They want to increase the moderate income rental housing pilot program to 20% below the CMHC average for rent in Vancouver.
I'll kick in before you come. Just so a lot of people don't know, CMHC actually does have a projected rent that they do provide to people in regards to how much they would project something of a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom in your specific city, how much it would cost. They actually use this figure to calculate the non-distanced rental for speculation and vacancy tax. Like if you're renting it to your sister, 4 times the minimum required, rent. How much is that? Well, they take it from the CMHC number, just so everybody understands.
And I just really want to highlight how Joe emphasized project. Because when I tell you these numbers and when you see them here, projection versus market is very, very different.
Yes.
This program was started in 2017, okay? And at that time, a studio would be $950 on average.
Okay.
A one bedroom, $1,200. Two bedroom, $1,600. And a three bedroom, $2,000. Now, if they were to upgrade to 20% below the CMHC average in today's projection, a studio would cost $1,135, a one bedroom $1,303, a two bedroom $1,818, and a three bedroom $2,447.
Seems like a steal for me.
So originally this program tried to incentivize developers if they were to build a purpose-built rental building and allocate 20% of the units to this program, they would either get higher density or they would get some breaks off of the fees like the CACs and the DCLs.
Yeah.
For people making 30 to 80K, that's kind of the income threshold that you would need to meet in order to fall into this moderate income program.
Yeah.
Every single year, yes, they could increase the rent. However, they would have to follow the maximum allowable by the residential tenancy.
So you have to follow the provincial government, just like the rest of us.
2 to 4% is what it has been for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
However, that obviously didn't factor in any inflation. So to this day, 6 years later, there are still people with moderate income who are paying $1,200 for a one bedroom. Ain't that a dream? Now, at the time, there were like 60 inquiries about this program. But as you can imagine, when they do the projection of, okay, how much income is this rental property actually generating, it made it quite difficult for lenders to give developers loans in order to build these.
Yeah.
Now, if you fast forward even 3 years from when this program started to COVID, when construction costs rose by 51%, having all these labor shortages, it just makes no sense, and the math made no sense. So basically, it kind of tanked the program. Out of the 60 people that inquired, 7 years later, 16 of them got approved.
Oh, jeez.
0 projects are complete. 9 are under construction. 3 received rezoning approval, and 4 are still waiting rezoning.
And that is the Canadian pace, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean,
this is a tough conversation because I can see the story from both sides. First of all, I'll pitch in and say, personally, I'm not against this whatsoever. Now, no, I'm not saying I don't care about the people, they're stressed, their limited income, it's not fair to raise rent. I just, on a personal level, I just feel like if everybody has to deal with inflation, why isn't affordable housing people also have to deal with inflation as well? So for me, it's like, I'm not saying to one scale, but some responsibility has to be given to the end consumer.
I agree 100%, or else it just promotes laziness. If these people think that they can get off and be like, okay, I'm only gonna have to pay this much, but I'm earning a little bit more, and they increase their income, but they're still within that threshold, it's a little bit of an unfair advantage to them, I think.
I agree. Now, another thing is I actually take the developer side on this as well, is that bringing up to the previous article is, what is it about rental homes that people just don't like? Is it because it's messy? Everybody that lives in are drug dealers? No, not necessarily. Is it because everybody just doesn't care that lives in? No, not necessarily. We've seen purpose-built rentals and people really, really care about their communities and stuff like that. Some of these co-op housings are amazingly taken care of, right? They're not high-income earners and stuff like that, right? So I personally feel like one of the reasons why a lot of people are afraid of this is because these purpose-built rentals or these rental homes are generally very quickly, they deteriorate really quickly, because initially I didn't understand why, but now I have a little bit more business sense. I understand why that these homes are the ones that gets deteriorated the quickest, because as inflation is going up and they're still paying this kind of rent, as a developer, like everything costs more, but your income isn't giving more.
Exactly. Right? So you're just bleeding in the red continuously year after year after year.
Yeah, and which developer will put themselves in the red? They wouldn't. So something has got to go. So what goes? Maintenance of the building. And once the maintenance of the building goes, the image goes down, and it just becomes that vicious cycle over and over and over again. And that's the reason why I personally think that people are really against purpose-built rentals. If there is a purpose-built rental that looks like a 5-star hotel, would you give a shit about it? Probably not.
No.
Yeah, right? So, however, unfortunately, a lot of these rentals or stuff like that, they all look like junk. They do. Right? They look like, okay, like something needs to happen to this building, right?
Or you're afraid that if you move in, you're gonna get bed bugs within 2 days.
Exactly.
And I agree with you. Like I have a negative connotation originally about purpose-built rentals as well, because I think it's just a bunch of drug dealers and crackheads that are gonna live there. But let's not mix up moderate income like rental housing versus social housing. Now those are two completely different, and once I had a better understanding of it, it changed my perception of it immediately.
And wouldn't that be like a win-win-win situation for everybody that's involved? Just my thought. A little extra money to go with the improvement of the building.
Yeah. I mean, right now the math just really doesn't make sense for the developer, and I get it. They're already getting a break. They're probably getting some tax rebate as well or something like that. But why would they build something that isn't sustainable long term? Then they're going to be the ones on the hook for it. They're going to ruin their own reputation because people are going to say, oh, this purpose-built rental was built by XYZ company.
Yeah. And it's falling apart.
Don't go with them.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And we were having this discussion prior to the podcast, is that if a lot of people was like, well, you know, the government's already doing so much. They took away this, took away that. But the problem is, if this is a free country, if the incentive is strong enough, don't you think something would have been done already? If the money is that good, something would have been done already, right? So those are just my thought. Do you have anything else to add in regards to this?
I think the one more thing I wanted to add is that, like, with their proposed amendment, they are going to maintain the same amount of rent, even when they get a new tenant. So as opposed to before, it would actually go back down. Yeah, based off of their income. You see, so it's like you're going backwards. You're going to be paying less than what the market is already, but then you're still paying less as a new tenant than people who have been here for a while. The whole system there, it just seems a little bit flawed, and it doesn't really applicable to like the market in this day and age. So I'm really hoping that there's some progression with this. Yeah. And come on, if you're paying what was it up here? If you're in a 2-bedroom and you're paying $1,600 and you're making, let's say, $80K. Or $70K even, you can afford to pay an extra $218 a month. That's the other thing I wanted to add, right? This is not social housing. Like a $70K income is like university education level. Yeah. I mean, granted, 70 is not like 70 before, but it's still good, decent. You know, you're not traveling everywhere, but you know, you could get by. Get by, right? I agree. That's right. Let's move on to the next article, which is, you know, probably arguably the biggest piece of news we've seen this month. It says Bank of Canada maintains policy rate, continues quantitative tightening. So as of Wednesday, October 25th, the Bank of Canada announced that they would be holding the overnight rate at 5%. Thank God. The article here does share that the global economy is slowing, but obviously with the conflict going on right now with Israel and Gaza, it is offering more geopolitical uncertainty. Oil prices are still higher than expected in July. And inflation in itself in Canada has been relatively volatile over the last couple months. 2.8% in June, 4% in August, and 3.8% in September. The October projection is for inflation to kind of average more around 3.5% throughout the middle of 2024 before gradually easing to the 2% target in 2025. But core inflation, the most important stuff, shows little downward momentum. Real estate, food. I think we've all felt energy. I remember talking about you when I sent you a picture the other day. It was like, oh wow, $19 for a pound of wings. Yeah. I remember when wings were like $8.25, $7.75, and that was, I didn't even feel like it was that long ago. I ate out the other day for one person. I ate $42.
No, like, look, I didn't eat like 3 people's worth. I know what you're about to say. No, we know each other long enough.
For those of you who don't know Joe can eat the equivalent of 3 meals.
Right.
But apparently not in this instance.
Not in this instance.
Tell me what you had. Tell them what you had.
I had a bowl of ramen, appetizer, and a drink. $42.
Jesus.
When I got the bill, I was like, wait, what? and that wasn't before. That was before tips. So, anyways, with this, I mean, a lot of people probably already like, what is this? Is this like 1.5 years into this already, right? Mm-hmm. I wanted to share something a little bit different. You know, back in the days, or if you talk to any real estate agent, what they'd be saying? Oh, rates are gonna come down. Rates gonna come down. And I hope the rate comes down. Blah 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 blah. I read a little bit more about it. I am actually thinking about changing my position a little bit. Mm-hmm. I know this is going to sound super weird to you, but just hear me out. I don't want the interest rate to come down too quickly, too soon. The reason why is if you think we're expensive now, what's going to happen if we all of a sudden drop the interest rate by 2%? Where do you think the prices are going to go?
To the moon!
To the moon, right? And what's going to happen is that, yes, we're going to open a little pocket of area where people can afford, barely afford, right? But remember, even if we drop the rate people are buying, they're barely affording this, right? And if prices starts to keep creeping up, then that means that in the future, should there really be another inflation crisis, the government can't even play with the interest rate anymore. What are we going to do? Like, and people are literally going to start defaulting on everything, and then their real estate price is going to tank like 40% and stuff like that. Like, that's no longer, they can't do that, right? So this is what I think. The new Jill for October of 2023, I'm thinking, until we figure out this housing crisis in terms of supply, there should be no reason why we have to drop rate immediately. And that's coming a lot from someone who is also suffering. I have a variable mortgage. Like, do you not see I want the rates to come down? But now I have a next step concern is that if we do drop it, I think the next generation is really going to get squeezed dry. So I'm thinking that what the Bank of Canada is doing right now is actually correct. Hold on to the rate. I don't want them to increase rates anymore. Honestly, that's a little too crazy, right? And then just hold on to it for like 6 months, 8 months. See how the economy plays out. Give people time to breathe, right? And let the core issue that we've been talking about in this podcast, which is obviously not enough housing, not enough purpose built, so on and so on and so on. Give a little bit of time to resolve that situation before you let the rate come down. What do you think about that?
I can see why you have a stance on that. And actually,
you agree?
I think I'm leaning towards agreeing, because if let's say they drop the rates in December, you know there's going to be an influx of buyers in January. And what's that going to do? It's going to bring inflation up again. Yeah. Then we're going to do this dance again. Yeah. But like you said, there will be a certain point where no matter how much you increase the interest rate, it's not going to bring inflation down. Or it's just going to fuck up the entire economy. So what's the purpose in that?
Right. Yeah. So I know it's very different. I've been talking to a lot of agents in regards to this, and everybody's telling me the same thing. It's like the rate really needs to come down. But I really thought about it. I was like, actually, until the problem is solved, I really don't think the rate needs to come down.
Well, because you're going to run into a more serious issue. If they drop the rates, more people are applying, then they raise the rates again, you're going to run into, like you said, more people defaulting, and then what?
And then what happens if you do that and then inflation really gets out of control? If you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google Venezuela. Like, honestly, Venezuela was one of the richest countries there is.
Aren't they like 100%?
Yeah. And something like this that we're talking about actually happened, and then the whole economy just crashed, right? That's kind of where I'm getting with this, is that unlike before where I'm like, lower the rates. Now I'm thinking, as a real estate agent, for the longevity of my career, and not having to go through the up and down like crazy, maybe we'll just keep the rate where it is for at least a little bit longer.
I would say spring until next year.
No, I'm thinking spring of 2025.
Oh, you want it for like 18
want
months?
it that far out because once again, until we figure out the solution for supply, we cannot risk dropping the rates, or else the price is just gonna go free for all again. And then at that time, we're really gonna have a problem. Just my thought about this, right? I want to provide something a little bit different, but I'm not just squeezing this out of my ass. I really think the more I thought about it, the more I'm thinking that this is probably the better way to do it.
No, I think your rationale does make sense the more you talk about it.
Yeah. That's it for the ones that we prepared. Ready to go off script a little?
Well, it's a perfect segue into talking about longevity in our careers, because one of these articles definitely will touch on that. Why don't you start with the other one?
I'll start with the local one. This is ridiculous. BC fast track immigration to fix real estate agent shortage?
You heard that right. There's a shortage of real estate agents
in BC. Just so you know, this article also basically say that, we need to get more people who has the skill sets to come into our province so they can start working, healthcare, restaurants, nurses, some of those accounting, like typical stuff that you expect that we need a lot. Somehow, if you tell the province of BC, you want to become a real estate agent, fast track.
So I wonder if they're gonna consider that as like a provincial nominee.
Oh, I hope.
Because if they do, we would have a lot of clients that are very interested in getting their real estate license.
Absolutely, right? So I don't hope that is the case. Dude, I'm so stunned by this article. Whoever wrote this, good for you, man. In this article, it also stated that in BC, there is more real estate agents per capita than LA.